Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really significant event, one of the most impactful of this century, really.
Yeah.
The September 11th attacks.
Yeah.
Our goal here, our mission for you, is to go, beyond just the headlines. We want to distill the key insights from the sources we've gathered, give you a solid, clear understanding of that pivotal day without hopefully overwhelming you.
Indeed. And the sources, they really hammer home that 9/11 wasn't just a date on the calendar. It was genuinely seismic. It fundamentally changed global policy, security thinking, even, how we think collectively. We're still feeling those aftershocks today.
Absolutely. And hopefully by the end of our chat, you'll have a much clearer picture of what happened, yes, but also why it still matters so much. Maybe uncover some perspectives you hadn't considered. Okay, let's get into it. So the absolute core of it, September 11th, 2001, a coordinated series of terrorist attacks carried out by the extremist group Al-Qaeda targeting the United States. It all unfolded incredibly fast that morning, just terrifyingly fast. And it changed, everything. Let's walk through that timeline like the sources lay it out. It really builds the picture of that escalating horror. First, 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time. American Airlines Flight 11 hits the North Tower. World Trade Center, New York City. People are just reeling, trying to understand what they just saw. And then, only 17 minutes later, 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 slams into the South Tower.
Right. And that's the moment that, the sickening realization hits. This isn't some horrible accident. It's deliberate. It's coordinated.
Exactly. And the horror just kept mounting.
Right.
9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. Then, 9:59 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. Just gone. A few minutes later, 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 crashes. This one's in a field, Shanksville, Pennsylvania. We know now that was after passengers bravely fought back against the hijackers.
Incredible courage in those final moments.
Unbelievable. And then finally, 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapses too.
And just to put those flights into context, based on the sources, AA Flight 11, Boston to LA, it hit the North Tower, destroyed it. UA Flight 175, also Boston to LA, hit the South Tower, brought that one down. Then AA Flight 77, leaving from Washington Dulles, also headed for LA. That hit the Pentagon, caused, massive damage.
Yeah.
And UA Flight 93, Newark to San Francisco. The evidence strongly suggests it was headed for a major target in D.C. Probably the Capitol building, maybe the White House. But because of those passengers and crew fighting back, it crashed in Pennsylvania instead. Saved countless lives, potentially.
An absolutely critical detail. And here's where, the sheer scale of the human cost really hits home. Our sources are stark on this. The immediate toll. Just devastating. 2,977 victims killed. That number doesn't include the 19 hijackers. And on top of that, over 6,000 people injured.
And something the sources really emphasize, which is so important for understanding the global nature of this. Those victims, they weren't just Americans. They came from over 90 different countries.
Wow, over 90?
Yeah. It drives home that this wasn't just an attack on the U.S. It was aimed at shattering a global sense of security. It really created this universal wound.
And then there's the economic fallout. Equally staggering when you look at the numbers. The materials we looked at point to over $60 billion in immediate damages, just from the attacks themselves.
60 billion. And that's just the start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you layer on the costs of the war on terror that followed. That figure is, it's over $2 trillion.
$2 trillion. It's almost impossible to comprehend that number.
Yeah.
A very long, very expensive shadow.
So that leads us to the why. Who is behind this, and what were their stated motives? The sources are completely clear on this point. The group responsible, Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden.
Yes. And what's really striking, looking back at the sources, is how plainly bin Laden stated al-Qaeda's motivations.
Yeah.
He spelled out these core grievances, the presence of U.S. military forces in the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia, U.S. support for Israel, and just this deep-seated anger over American foreign policy in Muslim countries generally. It wasn't vague. Later, bin Laden actually confessed, claimed direct responsibility.
He did.
Yeah, framing it very explicitly as revenge. Revenge for what he saw as U.S. interference in the Muslim world. And that framing, that clarity, however warped, it was a deliberate tactic. It shaped the entire global response, the whole idea of a war on terror. Suddenly, the world was engaging directly with this stated ideology.
So if those were the motives, the next big question is how? How did they actually pull off something so complex, so devastating?
Well, the chilling part is how relatively simple the method was, according to the sources. 19 terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airplanes. That was the core plan.
Ordained men.
Yeah. And interestingly, most were from Saudi Arabia. Many had actually gotten flight training, basic pilot training, in schools right here in the U.S.
Right, I remember that detail coming out.
And they exploited what was back then a major vulnerability: airport security. It just wasn't what it is today. The sources mentioned things like box cutters, simple weapons combined with deception to overpower the flight crews.
Box cutter.
It sounds almost rudimentary now, but it worked. And that specific failure, that vulnerability, directly led to this massive global overhaul of aviation security. Air travel changed forever, basically overnight.
Okay, so let's talk about those changes, the ripple effects. They were immediate, huge, both here and around the world. Inside the U.S., I mean, the shifts were monumental. Almost instantly, you see the creation of the Department of Homeland Security.
Consolidating all those agencies.
Right, exactly. And the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, suddenly airport security looked completely different. And then the Patriot Act, hugely significant, also hugely controversial.
Very controversial.
Yeah, it dramatically expanded government surveillance powers, kicked off this massive debate we still have about security versus civil liberties.
And if you connect that to society more broadly, the sources point to a really difficult consequence: a clear rise in Islamophobia. Hate crimes went up. There was this surge of suspicion and prejudice against Muslim and Arab communities.
A dark side effect.
Definitely. It marked a big shift, not just in policy, but in social dynamics too.
And then looking outwards, globally, the impact was just as profound. NATO. For the first time ever, they invoked Article 5.
Article 5, yeah. An attack on one is an attack on all. Unprecedented for NATO.
It signaled this incredible moment of global solidarity, at least initially. Many countries quickly pledged support to the U.S., which led directly into what became known as the War on Terror.
But that global alignment, as the sources show, it wasn't simple. It brought a lot of complex geopolitics into play very quickly.
Right. And that War on Terror, it really defined the next couple of decades, leading to two major conflicts. First, the invasion of Afghanistan that started in 2001. The stated goal was clear: remove the Taliban regime.
Because they were harboring al-Qaeda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And dismantle al-Qaeda itself.
Yeah.
Bin Laden, of course, was eventually found and killed, but not until 2011 and in Pakistan.
Right, by U.S. Navy SEALs.
Then the second major conflict, the invasion of Iraq in 2003. The initial justification, the public case, was built around the claim that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction.
WMDs.
WMDs, yes, that was the key claim.
Saddam Hussein's regime was overthrown. That happened.
Yeah.
But, and this is a critical point the sources highlight, no WMDs were ever actually found. And that distinction is crucial. The sources really draw a line between the justifications. Afghanistan was a direct response to 9/11, targeting the group responsible and their protectors. Iraq, however, was based on intelligence about WMDs that, well, turned out to be flawed or non-existent.
Right.
And that difference profoundly shaped international views, trust in intelligence, and U.S. foreign policy for years afterward.
Definitely. So let's shift focus back to Ground Zero. The World Trade Center site today, it's quite transformed. It's become this powerful place of remembrance, but also resilience. You have One World Trade Center, the Freedom Tower.
Reaching that symbolic 1,776 feet.
Exactly. And the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, it's incredibly moving, honors the victims so profoundly, with those two reflecting pools right in the footprints of the original Twin Towers. Just a stark, solemn reminder.
Very powerful space.
So, after covering all this, the attacks, the aftermath, the wars, the rebuilding, what does it all mean for us now? What are the big lessons?
Well, the sources we looked at really converge on a few critical takeaways. Lessons learned, or perhaps lessons we should have learned. First, starkly, even the most powerful nations are vulnerable. That was a huge psychological shock, forcing a total rethink of security.
Yeah, complacency was shattered.
Absolutely. Second, intelligence sharing, not just within a country, but globally, and cooperation between nations. The sources stress these aren't optional, they're crucial to preventing terrorism proactively.
Makes sense.
Third, security itself. It can't be static. Protocols have to constantly evolve, adapt to new threats, new methods. The pre-9/11 vulnerabilities showed that clearly.
A constant state of adaptation.
Exactly. And finally, maybe one of the most sobering lessons, particularly relevant given recent events: long-term military interventions, wars. They have massive, often unpredictable consequences. The sources point directly to the Afghanistan war lasting 20 years as a prime example of this.
20 years. It's hard to overstate the impact of that duration. These lessons, they really do shape how we have to think about global security, about history, about the future.
They underscore that constant need for vigilance, yes, but also for smart, adaptable strategies, and genuine international partnership.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We walked through the harrowing timeline of the day itself, the immediate human and economic toll. We looked at the motivations, the execution of the attacks, and then those huge ripple effects, the changes in the U.S., the global response, the war on terror.
A complex web of interconnected events and consequences. And maybe a final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on based on everything we've discussed from the sources. How do societies actually strike that balance? The balance between needing security, real security after something like 9/11, and protecting individual freedoms, civil liberties. It's a constant tension. And looking forward, what new kinds of global cooperation are really needed now, today, to tackle the threats that keep evolving?
That's a really important question to leave people with. If you do want to explore this more deeply, the sources we drew from point to some excellent further resources. On the documentary front, there's Turning Point, 9/11 and the War on Terror, that's on Netflix. 9/11 Inside the President's War Room on Apple TV is also compelling. And the series The Looming Tower on Hulu.
All very insightful.
And for reading, you really can't go wrong with the official 9/11 Commission report. Also, Lawrence Wright's book, The Looming Tower, which the Hulu series is based on, and Ghost Wars by Steve Call is fantastic for the deeper history.
Excellent recommendations.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this pretty heavy but really crucial deep dive. It's a defining moment, and understanding it matters. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.